You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVOL, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CFI options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVOL Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again for the Crypto Rundown, the program here on the Options Insider Radio Network, where we venture courageously beyond the traditional borders of the options market and see what's going on in the world of Bitcoin and ETH and all the other many and varied crypto products under the sun. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting network upon which so many of you have been mainlining these days. Remember, if you want even more in your lives, you want to get exclusive shows that are coming at you. Got double pro Q&As coming at you this week because we like you folks so much, as well as, of course, options oddities coming up at the end of the week. Live access to pretty much any show your heart desires throughout the week. Giveaways. That next one's coming up. Already coming up on the June box. Man, time flies when you're having fun, and so much more. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. Meanwhile, we have to go right into our first segment. It is time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trading activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down the action in the world's leading digital asset. Yep, we're talking about the old BTC. Remember, we were off last week for the Juneteenth holiday here in the U.S., so we have to go back 2 weeks to check out our last level. On our last show, we were at about a 23,600 in Bitcoin. And spoiler alert, we are lower than that right now. Coming into the start of the show, we were at 2886. So that puts us down about 2,700 handles from where we were this time 2 weeks ago. Of course, in between, we got even lower. We got down to just a bit north of the 18,000 level, 1834. That was on June 18th. Seems like a lot of the big moves come on the weekends in crypto for a variety of reasons. I think the market's a little bit thinner there, so we see a little bit of exacerbation as opposed to during the week when the trading markets are open. People are used to trading during those hours. They haven't all yet grokked the 24/7 nature of crypto. I know I myself sometimes like, oh, wait a minute. have to check whatever asset that's flashing on my device at the time because it's trading right now. It's, there is something to be said, I think, for that little bit of a respite you get at the end of the trading day for traditional products. But c'est la vie. Crypto 24/7, 365, no rest for the wicked. So we got down to about 18,000 on the 18th. So that's quite a range. That's over a 5,000 point range, 5,500 points. So that was quite a lot of living we did just in the span of a few days. Went from 18,000 on the dark side to 22,559. So a lot going on. A lot going on in the world of Bitcoin over the course of the past 2 weeks. Apologize for being off. Hey, don't blame us. Blame the holidays here in the U.S. In the interim, since the last time you and I have chatted here on the Bitcoin vol front, we have seen Bitcoin vol come in quite a bit. Remember on the last show I said, we were trading at a 109 then. That is a pretty lofty level for Bitcoin volatility. And if past is prologue, not always, but if it passed as a prologue in Bitcoin, which has been trading from a vol perspective, very analogous to a precious metal, which is it can get a nice lift to the vol, but it usually doesn't tend to hang out for long. So I said, if past is prologue, you might want to watch for a little bit of downside. On the vol side in Bitcoin, that's pretty much exactly what we saw. We were 109 on our last show. Coming into this show, 74.5. So quite the decrease out there. By the way, this stat, all the stats we're talking about on the show today, coming at you courtesy of our friends over there at Genesis Volatility. GVol.io is the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. Brand new coat of paint over there. So if you haven't been over there in a little bit, a whole bunch of new stuff. Not just on the graphical GUI side, but also under the hood. So a lot of great data. They're adding new bells, new whistles, new features all the time. GVol.io is the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. Let's go out a little bit farther afield. Now let's go out to our friend, Mr. Simon Ho's BitVol, a.k.a. his Bitcoin VIX. On our last show, it was about a 99, almost 99.5. And coming into this show, it was about an 88. So that has come in quite a bit as well. Remember, that's a little bit of a different metric. That's a rolling 30-day measure, very analogous to what they do with VIX when it comes to volatility. SKEW-wise, what's going on out there? Last show, obviously, decidedly negative. A negative 27. That's up there with some of the most pronounced negative Bitcoin skew we've seen since we started this program. This show, still negative, but a lot less. Negative 5.1 coming into this show. So back up almost 22 points from the true nadir that we saw on the show a couple of weeks ago. Bit skew, so Simon's measure of that, so coming in a little bit as well. Not quite as aggressive. Again, that's more of a kind of rolling 30-day measure. Was at a 98.75 on our last show, 96.30. So only down almost 2.5 points from our last show 2 weeks ago. You know what else came down quite a bit since our last show, listeners, was the open interest. We're seeing the number of calls open on Deribit down quite a bit. It's 116.5 thousand, really. That's down about 18,500 from this time 2 weeks ago. And the puts at 79,500, down 16,500 from this time last week. We've seen a big drop off in OI over the last couple of weeks. Most of that is because June was the leading expiration month that has now rolled off the board. We saw pretty much about 100,000 contracts go the way of the dodo on the June 24th expiration cycle. So remember on our last show, June had about 95,000 contracts open. So pretty much all those contracts went the way of the dodo since our last show. So we have seen a bit of a shakeup on the OI front. September is now the big dog with 49,000 contracts open. That's up 12,000, but it passes prologue yet again. We should see July taking the top seat pretty soon. In fact, it's breathing down the neck of September. It's 48,300 contracts open in July. So by this time next week, I fully expect it to take top spot. Number 3, bringing up the rear. December, 30,500 contracts. It's actually down 2,000 from this time last week. So again, we have seen a lot of OI come off the board and a little bit of relaxing, it seems like, out there in December since our last show. Let's look at the strikes. Let's see what's going on from a strike perspective, see if there's been any shakeup. And the answer is kind of, yeah. I mean, we have a new number 1. We'll get there in a second. Let's start at number 5, though. Also a newcomer to the top 5 here. That is the 24,000 strike with 7,300 contracts open. Again, that's a newcomer to the top 5. It is nice to see. I've said it before, the more relevant strikes fighting their way into the top 5 now. For a long time, Bitcoin was 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. It's nice to be optimistic. We like all those things, but this is where we're hanging out. So it's nice to see some contracts that are closer to where the product is actually trading that are lighting up the top 5 this week. Number 4, we have the 15,000 strike that has 8,400 contracts open. That's down about 1,300 from this time last week. Number 3, the 20K strike that has almost 11,000 contracts open, 10,900 to be precise. That's down 4,100 from this time last week. Number 2, the 25K strike, 11,300 contracts open. That's down 1,700 from this time last week. And number 1, a newcomer to the list, the 30,000 strike that has 12,100 contracts open. So that's an interesting one to see. So where do you line up on that top 5, listeners? Which of these strikes are you playing on? Any of these? Are you intrigued by any of those? You like other strikes? Are you wishing we were back at the 60K strike, threatening the par strike again? Yes, heady times out there. But again, it's always good to see more relevant strikes starting to percolate. And maybe that's a reflection, too, of just a sentiment change out there. Maybe not quite the swing for the fences every second, but perhaps, a nice steady base hit every now and then. Not the worst thing either. You can tell I've been watching a little bit of baseball lately. I don't even like baseball, so that's saying something. All right, I blame my son. He's dragging me into all these mediocre Chicago sporting teams. Let's go on out now to the volume. We're seeing a pretty active day since our last show. The busiest day was actually on the 22nd with about 15,600 contracts. That's really kind of a drop in the bucket compared to a couple of weeks ago on the 13th when we saw just the busiest day we've seen all year from a contract perspective. 54,400 contracts going up on the tape. That was a lot of paper in Bitcoin. That kind of coincided with the really aggressive sell-off we started seeing out there in Bitcoin. We have to go back to May 11th to see any other day that even rivals that. That was 46,000 contracts, so substantially less, but still a pretty hot day. And outside of that, pretty much nothing else this year really rivaling those 2 days. So May 11th and then June 13th, the big dog days from a volume perspective this year. Let's see what's going on from a volume perspective out there on the CME front. And you know what? How long have we been talking about the Bitcoin options over there at CME? Not really doing a heck of a lot of paper. They put up some numbers on Friday. 446 contracts on Friday. That's more than double what they do in a week sometimes. So sounds like someone is discovering the big options out there. The OI is also up to nearly 4,600. That's up 1,800 contracts from this time a couple of weeks ago. So that's a heck of a lot of paper for the Bitcoin options. I have to imagine the lower overall value of Bitcoin is contributing to that a bit as well. Obviously, this contract is a 5x multiplier, so it's not quite as beefy as it was a few months ago. Still extremely beefy contract, but not quite as bad. So maybe some funds have woken up to using this as a vehicle. Either way, some folks have discovered the big Bitcoin options over there at CME. Not the same case for the futures. Again, big beefy contract as well. Those did about 9,000 contracts last Friday. Not a ton of paper. They've done much more in the past. The OI, though, has continued to tick up about 3,000 to 14,400 over there on the futures side. Let's get to a product that's a little bit more right size for a lot of you folks out there. Let's get to the micros. They put up 12,000 contracts on Friday, so kind of a light day for them as well. So really the standout was the big Bitcoin options on Friday, putting up a lot of paper. The OI up about 5,000 contracts to about 23,400. So the OI continues to grow out there in the micro Bitcoin futures if we're not seeing a ton of paper yet. Now let's keep on exploring. Let's get a little bit farther afield into the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, where we explore everything outside of the big dog that is Bitcoin, except for right now when we talk about the top 10 from a market cap perspective. And man, the story for the better part of this year has been this market cap top 10 has just been dwindling and dwindling and dwindling, and that remains the case again this week. Only cost you 9.5 billion contracts to break into the top 10. I think that actually is a little bit up from a couple of weeks ago. I think we were at 7 billion and change. So perhaps a ray of light out there. That gets us to Doge. Again, Doge has kind of been holding down the number 10 spot ever since the whole Ever since stablecoin started melting down, Dogecoin has been benefiting by at least sneaking its way back into the top 10. On number 9, Solana, $13.3 billion. Number 8, Cardano, $16.3 billion. Number 7, XRP, $17.2 billion. Will they, won't they? Who knows? Kind of given up asking at this point. We'll find out eventually what the hell's going on with XRP. Is it too late? Coming in the teeth of this maybe crypto winter 2.0, 3.0? I suppose we'll have to wait and see. Number 6, Binance, $17.4 billion. Number 5, BNB, $38.5 billion. Number 4, USD Coin, $55.8 billion. Number 3, it's Tether, $66.8 billion. Numero 2, it's ETH, $145 billion. And number 1, much smaller than it used to be, $398 billion. We have seen ETH at close to market cap levels like that. So if we kept Bitcoin here and got ETH back up to its highs, then we could see the much hyped flippening. Not happening this week, though, because ETH, even though Bitcoin has been selling off, ETH following the same trajectory, got as low since our last show, listeners, at $902 on June 18th. Our last show, it was $1,243, and coming into today's show, $1,208. So we actually have regained a decent chunk of that. Did you scoop any ETH back below 1,000? Are you still scooping ETH? Have you moved on? Are you like Russell Rhodes? You dumped all your ETH at 2,500. You got the heck out of Dodge. Either way, hit us up. Let us know. So quite a lot of living over 300-point range since our last show, even though we are back up to levels close to where we were this time last week. What isn't close to the levels it was a couple of weeks ago is the vol. Again, just like Bitcoin, ETH vol was pretty frothy a couple of weeks ago. 147 coming into today's show, 94.5. So a lot of living on the ETH vol front as well. Similar story on the SKEW front last show 2 weeks ago, negative 31 coming into today's show, negative 7.5. So still negative, but nowhere near as dire, as apocalyptic as it was a couple of weeks ago. Let's see what's going on from an ETH OI front, and similar story to Bitcoin. June rolling off the board, taking quite a few contracts with it. The calls right now, there are 1.83 million calls open on Deribit. That's down 260,000 contracts from this time a couple of weeks ago. The puts, 586,000 contracts open. That's down 156,000 contracts. So both of them coming down aggressively, but calls still dramatically outnumbering puts by over 3-1 out here in ETH land. So if you're waiting for that moment where the calls and puts even out, got to wait for a while out there in ETH land. In terms of action, it was the 22nd out here as well. That was the most active day since our last show, 181,000 contracts going up. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot. It's because it isn't. On the 13th, we saw 391,000 contracts going up. On the 11th of May, we saw 461,000 contracts going up. Weirdly enough, the 22nd, though, did 40.5 million worth of options premium that day, which is in line with those days that did far more contracts. So obviously something was going up that was pretty beefy back on the 22nd that accounted for a lot of premium going up out there, even though contract-wise, it was one of the lighter days we've seen out there in a while, which, again, is kind of interesting. A little bit strange out there, but we come to expect the strange out here in the crypto landscape. OI, same deal, June rolling off the board. It took nearly 1 million contracts with it on our last show. It had 917,000 contracts open, so that accounts for a lot of the drop-off we saw in the OI. That means September taking the top spot right now, 778,000 contracts open. That's up 174,000 since this time 2 weeks ago. So June going away, people repositioning in September as well as December. December number 2 with 500,000 contracts exactly, up 75,000 contracts from this time 2 weeks ago. July, distant number 3, 374,000 contracts. That's a newcomer to the top 3. It's definitely going to replace December. Will it make it all the way up to toppling September by the time of expiration? It could get there. You know, July is not typically a super active period, but we shall see. Crazier things have happened out there. Let's see what's crazy from a strike perspective right now. What's the top 5 size positions in ETH options? Number 5 is the 6,000 strike that has 102,000 contracts open. That's down 24,000 contracts from this time last week. Number 4, the 10,000 strike, 116,000 contracts open. That's down 32,000 contracts from this time last week. Number 3, now we're getting a little bit more relevant, 3,500. That has 127,000 contracts open. That's down 13,000 from this time last week. A lot of OI coming off the board, as we said earlier. Number 2, the 5,000 strike that has 148,000 contracts open. That's down 17,000 contracts from this time 2 weeks ago. And the number 1 position in ETH options, yet again, the 4,000 strike that has 158,000 contracts open, down 42,000 contracts from this time 2 weeks ago. So unlike Bitcoin options, which seem to be lining up a little bit more around the current trading level of Bitcoin, ETH still remains a wee bit optimistic. The 4,000 strike, 5,000 strike, 6,000 strike, 10,000 strike. I mean, the most, dare I say it, relevant strike we have here is the 3,500 strike, which we have not been at for quite some time. So intriguing to see what's going on in ETH versus what's going on in Bitcoin. Does that reflect difference in sentiment out there? Has ETH still just have to catch up with what's going on out there in the underlying? Hit us up. Let us know what you think out here. ETH futures doing decent paper over there at CME, the biggest, most recent day. 7,600 contracts going up last Friday. That's up. That's actually that's decent paper for ETH futures. Again, this is another big contract. The OI ticking up a little bit, almost 4,000 contracts open there, now up about 400 from our last show a couple of weeks ago. The micro contracts, let's see, pretty big day on Friday, actually. 30,500 contracts going up. So folks were slinging some micro ETH. The OI also ticking up 14,000, back up to 45,000 contracts. So it's kind of interesting, given the fact that ETH has sold off so much. I think it would make a better argument for the bigger contracts, but folks are still piling in to the micro ETH futures. Have you guys traded these yet? I'm curious what you have to say about the micro ETH futures or the options or the micro Bitcoin futures or the micro Bitcoin options. Hit us up. Let us know. Let's go out to some of the rest of the altcoin universe where we get to some of your questions here, paying off this kind of just the facts, ma'am edition of the crypto rundown this week. XRP coming into today's show, 35.6 cents. Last show was 31.8 cents. So it was actually up nearly 4 cents over the last couple of weeks. Doge, 5.5 cents a couple weeks ago, 7.2 cents. So again, a little bit of a lift since our last show. Litecoin, can we keep the trend alive? 44.29 2 weeks ago, 56.14 this week, up nearly 12 handles. Cardano's kind of unched, weirdly enough. 47.7 cents 2 weeks ago, 48.5 cents this week. Polkadot, 7.15 2 weeks ago, 7.88 today, so up about 3/4 of a buck. Solana, 28.5 bucks 2 weeks ago, 38.87 today, up 10.37 from where it was this time 2 weeks ago. And our old friend, the Sheeb, actually had a nice pop. It was up nearly 50% over the weekend. That's still up to a whopping 0.000011. 2 weeks ago, it was a whopping 0.000008. So a decent move, still multiple decimal points obviously out there. So unfortunately, no Shiba Lambos on the offing yet. But let's see what you folks have on the brain, a little bit of your crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, let's get to it. First, let's pay off this poll we actually asked a couple of weeks ago, but we've been off for a couple of weeks in the crypto rundown, so we haven't had a chance to actually pay this off. We asked you guys, this crypto bloodbath makes it a good time to revisit this question, the perennial question in crypto. Quite simply, which level will Bitcoin hit first? We have done in the past 10,000 and 60,000. We adjusted that a little bit to make it a little bit more relevant. The time we posted this, Bitcoin was almost exactly 25,000. So we said down to 10,000, or so cut more than in half, or up to 50,000, pretty much exactly doubling out there. And 73.4% of you said 10K. So that's unfortunate news for all the hodlers out there. Only 26.6% of you saying 50K is next up in the target list there. Maybe that also is why we're seeing some more of these more relevant strikes percolating into the Bitcoin options. This type of outlook is kind of what's being reflected right now in the overall Bitcoin options landscape as well. Doesn't mean we can't get back to the heady, frothy days. Just for right now, it seems like calmer, saner, cooler heads are prevailing out there. Let's go on out to this question. Interesting one here from RCH as well. He or she wants to know, I appreciate you guys breaking down Bitcoin and ETH options activity each week. Well, you're welcome there, RCH. They go on to write, but are there any other crypto options that do enough activity that are worth investigating? Yeah, interesting. We get this question a lot, and the answer traditionally has been, not a lot. But lately, we're starting to see more activity on some of these. In fact, I mentioned at the top of the show, a new coat of paint over there at Genesis Volatility. One of the other things they've added now is Solana. So this is kind of often mentioned as the other side of that kind of ETH Solana fight, that debate. It's kind of a religious schism almost at this point in the crypto space, which side you fall on. Either way, Solana has been very much in the headlines and news for the better part of the last year and change. Had that amazing run up all the way up well north of 100, crashing right back down. All that movement, all that headline making activity tends to generate some options interest as well. Now, obviously, the underlying has fallen off quite a bit, so the options use case has dropped quite a bit, but it's still not like an XRP where it's trading 38 cents where the underlying is an option. There still is a use case for the options, and we are seeing that actually reflected. We are seeing some actual paper out here. In fact, on the 13th, June 13th, so the day when Bitcoin and ETH were both having some of their most active days of the year, we saw the same thing for Solana, putting up 54,000 contracts. So that is nothing to sneeze at. So I guess the short answer to your question is it might be interesting to start paying attention to Solana options. And who knows? If they keep on this trajectory, we might have to start adding them into our rotation here every week. I know a lot of you are interested in Solana. What do you think? Should we start incorporating Solana into the crypto rundown here? We've been waiting for a while to have another underline that does any sort of paper that we can really sink our teeth into. Maybe Solana, even given the sell-off, maybe Solana will make that list. What do you guys think? Hit us up. Let us know. Should we add Solana into the mix? All right, listeners, that music means that's going to do it for our Just the Facts, ma'am, edition of the Crypto Rundown this week. Back again tomorrow for all you pro folks with the Pro Q&A, part one of our two-part Pro Q&A extravaganza this week. Also have the advisor's option coming up with our buddy, the Oracle of New Hampshire. He's been known to talk about crypto once or twice in the past. Maybe you want to check out that one as well. In fact, he and I did a crypto panel together way back in, what was that? So I want to say that was 2018 here in the early kind of initial run-up of the madness. Right after the futures were launched, everyone was going crazy out there. That was a fun one. Myself, Mr. Matt Amberson, Tony Saliba, a bunch of other. Mr. Bill, one of our regular contributors on this show, all got on the stage together with some folks from CME and others to break down the, at that time, burgeoning world of Bitcoin derivatives and crypto derivatives. There really wasn't much outside of Bitcoin futures. The options hadn't even launched yet at CME, so still early days. Oh, how far we've come. We're talking about Solana options now. How cool is that? So a lot to sink our teeth into out here, even though, again, has been a lot of blood red on the screen. That makes the options sometimes, and the volatility at least, a lot more interesting to analyze. So we'll see you back here this time next week, another episode of the Crypto Rundown. Stay safe out there, everybody.
This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVol, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVol Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.